Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. The boys are back from Philadelphia. I'm back from the couch. They're back from a very successful trip from Philadelphia, and that was Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni off the top, being very thankful for A.J. Brown.
Underrated personality, Nick Sirianni.
He plays the villain really well.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel, who we love, has an awesome personality as well. He gets a lot of the credit, but Nick Sirianni, quietly, the brain is ticking with him. He's got a good sense of humor.
Very different human beings.
He does have. He absolutely has a good sense of humor too, and I completely understand like everything he's saying right there. I will tell you, Philadelphia was such a huge success, Connor. It was great, and literally as soon as we were done with the show, I went to NBC and I said, "Hey, Mr. NBC, I just thank you for the $12 to get me Jay Croucher. He is worth every penny. Thank you for the $12 to get me Jay Croucher."
Don't forget the Dollaritas.
And the Dollaritas. I mean, we paid him
just
actually.
the $12.
It was $12 and unlimited Dollaritas.
Yeah, the $4
I will tell you this about those Dollaritas. Yes, they go down smooth, dude. I mean, like.
You should have seen Barry.
I was legit hammered there for the second hour.
I did watch quite a bit of it last night. When I sat down and during halftime, I was like, let me see how this went. And I saw the man in the $4.99 Matthew Berry costume. I felt a little responsible for how much I encouraged that throughout the week. So, listen, we will recap some pregame.
There's one thing I got to say.
Yes.
Here's this guy. Here's the guy.
This is
perfect. So this guy came dressed as Matthew Berry, and I like that he put little to no effort into it, other than just he threw on a bald cap and a blazer. But honestly, like I don't put much work into my appearance either. I think this is appropriate.
The real scary thing is that he kept on wearing it for like the first hour of the show as he was just having lunch with his family or whatever. So I kept on looking over and like, oh yeah, he's still looking terrifying, and that's great.
Yeah.
There's the crew.
Huge crowd came out. We appreciate everyone in. It wasn't North Philadelphia. It was Northeast Philadelphia. We were, and the entire crew there at Applebee's was incredibly welcoming. Huge crowd came out. Candidly, you never know how many people are going to come to these things, and so we had people come from all over. We had people dress up. Like one guy came dressed as Indiana Jones. Like we encouraged. You see a guy there in the back. Some guy brought his bird helmet that he wore. A bird. It
was a giant hat.
It was a giant hat. It was like it was a hat for a hat, and it was just like one of these things where it was just like. He said he bought it at a garage sale for $3. And then I'm like, well, what did your wife say when you showed up with this thing, that you bought a $3 Eagles head at a garage sale? It says, well, she encouraged it. And I was just like, that man married
that's true
well.
Love. That's true love.
That is true love. That
Matthew,
is finding your soulmate right there.
And that Eagle head has a story now from going from a $3 purchase at a garage sale to being on Football Night in America, the most watched show in America. So we got a little bit of run on the big show.
Matthew Berry and the Fantasy Football pregame gang was in a Philadelphia Applebee's this morning, and it was 5 o'clock somewhere. Plenty of fans showed up. We've got mascots. We've got it all. And somehow Matthew has made his way to the field for the DraftKings Sportsbook 3-play.
Yes, thank you, Maria. Made it out alive. The Philadelphia Eagles faithful were out in full force.
They were out in full force as well. So it was awesome to meet everyone. I just want to, before, and we're going to get into everything from week 7, I promise. But one last thing I just wanted to pull up here. Do you have that picture that I sent you, Steven? Let's show this up. So this is a picture right here. You see this right here on your screen. So this is a picture of Nicole, and that is her husband, Ben, in the back, and their beautiful family. And Nicole told me a story that 10 years ago, her and Ben had started dating, and Ben was a big fantasy football fan, and she was in the throes of courtship. And she's like, oh, yeah, I love fantasy football. I love football, big fan. She's never played before in her life.
Just went with it.
So, right, but, when you're dating, you tell little lies, whatever, to, ingratiate yourself with the other person. And so what she says to me, she says, so anyway, they've been dating like a month or two at something like that. And then all of a sudden, Ben's fantasy league at the last minute has somebody drop out. And he's just like, Nicole, why don't you join the league? You're a big player. You love it. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, oh, crap. And she had an hour to do the draft. And she's like, oh, no. She's like, I know nothing about fantasy football. She's like, so I quickly Googled, and your name came up, and your preseason love-hate for whatever that year was. And so all I did was just use that article and draft. And in week 1, I'm playing my boyfriend, and I beat him. right? And so he was just like, wow, you really know what you're doing, everything like that. And she said eventually, a couple months in, she revealed to Ben that she didn't really know anything about fantasy football. She was just literally just reading like one column every single week. And since then, they started reading the column together. It became something they did as a couple.
That's nice.
And they've now been together for over a decade, and they obviously have a beautiful family. Love-hate brought them together. Fantasy football brought them together. And I can't tell you how awesome I thought that. The fans were great. Everything was amazing in terms of the turnout and the fun and the Indiana Jones and the Eagles head. But honestly, seeing a family that came out of fantasy football, that was a bonding moment for that couple. They were awesome. Anyway, the whole thing was
fantastic.
That's the stuff that makes it worth doing.
Last thing, Connor, I will never forget. I think it was in the ad break after segment 2. Matthew, with the kind of glazed look in his eyes as the dollar readers started to do their work, he turned to me and he was like, I think I'm in a bit of trouble here.
Oh, man. Somebody take the wheel.
I quickly ordered. I said, "Can we get an order of pretzels?" Stat.
Yes.
I gotta throw something in my gullet here.
Fill the table with apps.
Soak up some Dollaritas. They go down smooth. I'm just gonna tell you. Big fan. Anyway, big fan of. We appreciate Applebee's hosting us, and again, thanks so much to everyone in Philadelphia that came out and celebrated with us. We had people come. We had people that had driven an hour. We had one woman that had come from Mississippi. Both things. It was it was awesome.
A great start to the day for everybody in Philadelphia, and a great night for everybody, all those Philadelphia fans as well. As we jump into our Rotoworld Player news, I mean, who else to start with here, guys, than A.J. Brown, who catches 10 of his 15 targets for 137 yards and a touchdown. This is A.J. Brown's 5th consecutive 125-plus yard game. It's just been absolutely ridiculous what he's doing right now in this Eagles offense.
And I think A.J. Brown, he goes a little bit under the radar, which is weird to say because he's A.J. Brown, but I think Chris Sims had a good tweet this morning where he said basically the 3 best wide receivers in football right now, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, I think, is the 3rd guy at the moment, and over his past 13 games, which is pretty close to a full season sample, over that 13 games, you extrapolate that out to 17, that's 1921 receiving yards. That's basically Cooper Kupp's year from 2021, which is the greatest wide receiver season of all time. That's basically what A.J. Brown has been doing for 13 weeks. I don't think we think of him like that because it's such a run-heavy offense and it's the O-line, it's the tush-push. A.J. Brown is one of the best players in football, and I was glad that he got his time in the spotlight where he basically outplayed Tyreek Hill on Sunday Night Football.
I think it's for a few reasons, right? I think it's because he came out of college, he was a good prospect, wasn't great, he was a second rounder, he wasn't considered the best of his class, although, and then he went to Tennessee, which again, small market, run heavy team.
It was Derrick Henry's team.
It was Derrick Henry's team, that's right. And so then he gets traded to Philadelphia, again, another run heavy team as well. It's also, and I know this is a dumb thing, and I think this is a Bill Simmons thing, but it's just I think if he had a cooler nickname or a cooler, A.J. Brown is just kind of a solid, basic name. Yep. But Tyreek Hill is
Jahmyr Chase.
Jahmyr Chase, right? Exactly. Even Cooper Kupp, it just, It just for whatever reason, A.J. Brown's just a normal All-American Brown, name, and it's just sort of what are you doing? I'm going to dinner with my buddy A.J. Brown, whatever. He's 3 cubes down from me.
Exactly.
It's just anyway. So I think that's, for all whatever reasons, he doesn't get the national recognition he should as one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL and in fantasy, but he clearly is, and just the connection between him and Jalen Hurts. We thought this might happen when he got traded last year, because they are close friends off the field prior to him playing for Philadelphia, and it keeps getting better and better. So it's unbelievable, and this is what we said last week as well. I think in the preseason there was a thought that A.J. Brown, it was 1A to Devontae Smith's 1B. There's a massive gap in terms of value between those two guys in fantasy football.
Yep. And there is a way, Connor, now that you can take advantage of A.J. Brown being underrated. A.J. Brown on DraftKings is 18-1 to an Offensive Player of the Year. Jahmyr Chase is 20-1, so they're basically the same price. A.J. Brown has 250 more receiving yards than Jahmyr Chase and is on a way better team. Yeah. And this seems to be sustainable because, yes, the Eagles run the ball a ton, but when they do throw it, they only throw it to 3 guys, and A.J. Brown is clearly number 1 of those 3. So I think A.J. he's on pace to have one of the best wide receiver seasons in recent memory, and he can absolutely win that award if Tyreek falters a little.
Since week 3, he has a 33.5% target share. 33% target share. He's the second best wide receiver in fantasy on a points per game basis since week 3.
And as we kicked off the conversation with fifth consecutive 125-plus yard game, we got to hear from A.J. Brown after the game on joining Megatron's company with that stat line.
See, that's a good nickname too, Megatron.
Shout out to Calvin Johnson, man. Just to be beside his name, you know, it says a lot. You know, I'm honored. You know, that guy's a Hall of Fame receiver. You know, something I hope to be one day. Each and every possession, I'm trying to stay locked in with my routes and my pad level, and you know, just making sure I catch the ball, and you know, breaking it down to the smallest of the T. You know, and just trying to stay locked in for my team. You know, I'm not. You know, whatever I have at the end of the game is what I have at the end of the game. But, you know, whenever I get my opportunity, I know I got to come alive.
So you know how Pro Football Reference always has nicknames next to the players' names?
Yeah.
A.J. Brown's is Swole Batman.
I've never heard of that.
Arthur Juan Brown, in parentheses, Swole Batman.
Swole Batman.
I can't have this.
Yeah.
I don't know if
work.
that's. I don't
America
know if people,
needs to work. We give
I'm
nicknames to everyone. Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper. That's already taken, but it's already used.
some
That. We
teammate
need a
has
new
better
nickname
nickname.
for A.J. Brown.
Yeah. If he's
Thick
the,
Reaper.
if he, yeah. Well, that's what I am. That's what I'm.
A.J.
I'm
Brown's that too.
Yeah. Well, if he's the Swole Batman, like what's Jay? Like you know,
Oh,
like
my.
yeah, the you know the Australian
Vegemite
Batman.
Batman?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
the
you go.
Vegemite Batman.
There you go.
Exactly.
Boomerang Batman.
Boomerang. Oh, that's not bad. Boomerang Batman's not bad. I'm like the bald Batman. Is what I am. Basically, something like that.
Or arguably not Batman at all.
Yeah, just bald.
Yeah.
Just Matthew Berry.
Yeah.
So,
Wearing a hat.
besides A.J. Brown, in terms of the pass
It was a long
catchers
night.
on the Eagles, Dallas Goedert with a good night, caught 5 targets, 77 yards, and a touchdown. You had Dallas Goedert on pregame football. Night in
I
America,
did it.
right?
That was my
Tight
Barry's.
end day.
That was my Barry's best bet. It was tight end day. I took the over on 40.5 receiving yards. He cashed that actually on the first drive as well. We talked about the fact that Miami struggles against tight ends. They were top 10 in the NFL coming into the game in terms of most yards allowed to the tight ends. And so Dallas Goedert, who is getting a lot of targets in the last 3 games, he's got a target share of over 20%. He's one of the top 5 fantasy tight ends in fantasy as well. So, you know, 2 of the last 3 games, he's had over 18 fantasy points. He should have a nice little run here against my brutal Commanders, Cowboys. There's a bye then at Kansas City and Buffalo. So
Jay, while the
they'll have
success
their work cut out for them.
continued for A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, once again, another game under 10 points, 8.9 points. This is single-digit fantasy points in 4 of the last 5 games. Some of the passes, like he had the one drop, but some of the passes were high. But he's just not the same focal point of this offense that some of the other guys are.
Yeah, I think until this point, my thought has been there's just too much talent. It'll get right for Devontae Smith. Now I've turned. Now I think the alarm bells are ringing. He seems in his own head. That drop, like it was contested, but Devontae Smith catches that. That's a ball that he catches. He had the bad drops against the Jets. I think he's in his own head, and he's kind of become the third guy on this passing offense because of how well Dallas Goedert is playing. So look, you're still starting Devontae Smith every week. I think it helps him that the Eagles either play the Commanders or outside of that, they have a brutal schedule upcoming, so they're going to have to be throwing the ball, you would expect. And still, it is still after A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. Like, there's no one else taking targets away from him.
But I think that's a key point here. This offense and candidly defense is so good. The run game is so successful that they can, you know, they don't need to throw a ton, and their defense is so good that they don't often get into shootouts. And so I don't know that this offense has enough volume in its passing attack to support 3 fantasy relevant pass catchers every single week. We know A.J. Brown is always going to get his. So honestly, on any given week, it could be Dallas Goedert or it could be Devontae Smith as well. What's concerning to me, Jay, the most, I agree with you that the drops might be in his head, but 5 or fewer targets in 4 out of 7 games this year. Like there's in over half the games the Eagles have played this year, he just hasn't been a massive. Forget the drops or what, you know what I mean? Like he had the 11 targets last week, fine. But whatever, when you're not an active part, when you're getting less, when you're that talented and you're getting less than 5 targets in 4 of 7 games, 5 or fewer, that's a concern to me. And so I would, if we were ranking for the rest of the year, I think, you know, previously he was a high-end wide receiver 2. I think you have to move him down to sort of like mid-tier wide receiver 3 territory. You are most likely starting him most weeks. But I think there's a scenario where I'm making it up, but you easily could have started your draft with could have gotten Tyreek Hill in the middle of the first round, come back around to the end of the second, gotten Devontae Smith. You kind of went 0 RB there, and maybe you picked up like Puka Nacua, at somewhere, and then like you're not starting Devontae Smith. No. If you have only if you're playing in a league with only 2 wide receivers and you got like Hill and Nacua or something like that, I no longer think he is an absolute no-brainer must start. I think more likely than not you're starting him, but just, you have to be concerned at this point. He's wide receiver 39 so far this year. He's had single-digit fantasy points in 4 of the last 5.
Outside of Tyreek Hill, not a huge night for the Dolphins offense. For Tua, 23 of 32, 216 yards, 1 touchdown, the really bad interception. Disappointing by Tua's standards, outside the top 20 quarterback finishes yesterday. And it kind of trickled throughout the entire offense, guys. I mean, the run game could not get going against the Eagles front. Raheem Mostert, 9 carries, 45 yards. Jeff Wilson didn't get a carry. He had 1 catch for 4 yards while kind of splitting backup reps with Savon Ahmed. Just not a typical Dolphins game format in terms of the run game.
Yeah, I mean, Tua was on my love list as well,
right.
So, got that one wrong. Just a swing and a miss. My 2 biggest misses from this weekend were thinking the Dolphins offense would show up against Philadelphia, which did not happen, and the Colts-Browns game, which we'll get to. I got that completely wrong, left and right, always, 6 ways till Sunday. For me, what happened there was just guy had no time. First off, it was a little bit, they had the quick pick 6 that's, quote, stole a possession from them as well. So that was one thing. But Tua just didn't have a lot of time. He also missed Jalen Waddle for a good chunk of the game, so that hurt as well. Tyreek Hill, first off, so Tyreek Hill catches a touchdown that they call back due to penalty. There was another one where he catches it in stride and then his knee goes up and it bounces off. And
that's on Tyreek. Tua threw that perfectly. That's a walk-in touchdown.
Correct.
That would make his stats look a lot better.
Correct. And so, I think if 9 times out of 10, Tyreek comes down with that and races off to the end zone. And I think the numbers and the narrative on Tua look different if he makes that play. So, and again, the officiating was certainly interesting last night, to say the least. So if they don't, now this one right here, what you're seeing right here, this play right here, which was the attempted touchdown pass to Raheem Mostert that Slay picks off, and maybe they're, I know on the broadcast they said that was a clean play where they grab Mostert. I don't know. I will say that one's a little bit on Tua because I think he should have thrown that a beat earlier. I think if he throws that a beat earlier and it gets there quicker, that's a touchdown for Mostert.
They weren't going to bail out the quarterback throw on that one. That's why.
Yes.
So it was a bad throw. It was underthrown. Slay did a great job breaking off Waddle and grabbing the interception, and it's a bad mistake.
Yeah. But it's just, I guess, I'm not worried about Tua.
No,
I'm not worried about Tua.
He'll be fine. I think in a football sense, it's a bit of a red flag that the Dolphins under Mike McDaniel since the midpoint of last year have lost every single big game that they've played. They're just over. They lose every big game that they play. And I think a concern, Connor, is that the offensive line of Miami, which got shown up last night by a great defensive front, Teron Armstead is out for a while, and that has been masked until this point where I think they've just been so good at getting the ball out quickly, but when they couldn't create separation quickly enough last night, then the offensive line seemed to really rear its head.
And this is the story with them, right? Yeah. Teron Armstead misses time, and they have to patchwork. Liam Eichenberg, a college tackle, is playing center, and he had some bad snaps last night, too, which wasn't a problem for a couple weeks for him, but Isaiah Wynn gets hurt. He got rocked by Jalen Carter on a rep and got hurt. They are really thin on the line, and Jay, you're right. When teams try to take away quick game, it'll be interesting to see how the Dolphins react to that in the next coming weeks.
It just feels like it almost feels like speed is almost all they have. And listen, and that's a massive advantage most games. But again, it's just one of those things. When they get hit in the mouth, they're just we're just going to keep running fast. And it's just, Philadelphia seemed like the tougher team, if that makes any sense last night. They're just
they're just better on both lines.
Yeah,
so much margin.
Yeah, they're just more physical, and sometimes you just can't run away. If that makes any sense. Anyway, I don't know, but. Anyway, back to the drawing board for Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins. Fantasy-wise, they'll be fine. I'm not worried about Raheem Mostert either. Again, it just bad day at the office for the entire offense. Again, Tua throws that a beat earlier. He catches the touchdown pass. No one's worried about Mostert. We didn't really see anything from Jeff Wilson Jr. Until further notice, it is Raheem Mostert in the backfield for the Dolphins.
And with that, we'll move on to Browns-Colts, a game that my pickup line was the under. And this game
I bought it, by the way.
I
believed in that line. I agreed with you.
A shocking game, really on multiple fronts. The Browns' defense, what Gardner Minshew was able to do, how efficient he was. Jonathan Taylor gets the touchdown on 18 carries and 75 yards. He also had 3 catches for 45 yards. I mean, obviously there's a lot of conversation at the end of this game about some of the calls, whatever. From a fantasy perspective right now, good day from the Colts offense in a brutal matchup.
I mean, listen, I'm going to, you know what I'm doing? I'm patting myself on the back. This is what I'm doing.
Taking the under?
No. I did take the under. That one's a bad call. I had Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss on the hate list. That was a bad call. I thought this was going to be a low-scoring game. That was all bad calls. But I did have Josh Downs on the love list.
There we go.
So there you go. I got one out of 5 in that game of the calls that I made. There is clearly a connection as we've talked about Josh Downs here for a long time. He's the 3rd best wide receiver in fantasy as we head into Monday Night Football. Over 100 receiving yards, his first career game. So far this year with Gardner Minshew, we keep talking about this connection between him and Minshew. A 22% target share, double-digit fantasy points in 4 of the last 5 games to the rookie. We've talked about him a lot, Connor, in terms of just what a perfect fit he is as kind of a PPR slot guy.
He's been phenomenal. He can really, and we saw him win down the field yesterday, which to me was really, really promising. And Gardner Minshew picked up on a free play and hit downs. And when you look at the rookie wide receivers right now, I mean, you're talking about Puka Nacua, of course. Josh Downs is right in the mix as one of the most productive rookie wide receivers right now, and that's only trending upwards, Jay. This is going to continue with Gardner being the starter for the rest of the season.
Yep, 100% agree. And I think from this game, the most interesting, both football and fantasy element is just how real was that Browns defensive performance? Because, we're putting guys like Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, not on the shelf because it was Bipocalypse, but, shelf adjacent because of the matchup.
I had Taylor at 18 and on the hate list. And I said basically, you got to start him, but just lower expectations. And that was wrong because he was great.
So you think about the Browns defense and compare that to, 2 weeks into the season, everyone's like, this Cowboys defense is one of the best defenses of all time. And you look at the names, it's like, it makes sense, right? Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Gilmore. You always looked at the Browns off defense and it's like, all right, well, Myles Garrett's amazing. But outside of that, it's like, I like Greg Newsome. I think he's pretty solid. Denzel Ward had a down year last year. Maybe he's back. But, Connor, do you think this Browns defense is, the all-world unit that it was statistically through the first 6 weeks, or is it a little vulnerable?
I think you go back to last year and think of their one big problem is that you could run on the interior. And they cleaned up a lot of that this year. They went into the offseason. They got Jim Schwartz. They cleaned up a lot of that. But you could still see some of the leaky faucet there. And that's what I want to see how teams test them. In this game, when you look at the Colts, 18 carries for Jonathan Taylor, 18 carries for Zach Moss. Gardner Minshew was effective running in the red zone. That's the thing I want to see how the Browns react because it can't just all be Myles Garrett, Jay.
Yep. And to be fair, Myles Garrett did almost win the game by himself in the first half. He had 2 strip sacks, one that led to a touchdown, and then blocked a field goal as well. Right now on DraftKings, he's 3rd favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. 3rd. He should be 1st with a bullet. He is the best defensive player in the game right now and played like it yesterday. Outside of that for the Colts, I mean, Minshew, I think the passing game for the Colts was a little bit more fluky. Really bad missed tackle on Michael Pittman for that long reception. And Minshew, I mean, he's going to provide more value through the air to the receivers than Anthony Richardson did, but I'm not too excited about him.
Listen, the 2 rushing touchdowns were nice, but not something you would expect to happen. He's a nice bye-week fill-in. But I think the positives is that if you roster Michael Pittman, if you have the running backs, if you have Josh Downs, he's going to be good enough to keep them afloat fantasy-wise. We've thought this all along. To me, the big story of this game, other than just the shocking nature of it and the crazy back and forth and one what we thought was elite defense and one we thought was solid defense and certainly should have been better against P.J. Walker. The fact that almost 80 points were scored in this game. What I will say is I think the running backs. Let's start with Indianapolis. This is now Jonathan Taylor's backfield. So, I mean, again, 21 touches, 120 total yards. That was a season high for him as well. It was also a season high snap rate for him as well. You see it there on your screen, 49% to 51% for Zach Moss in terms of the snaps. But that's again, Jonathan Taylor's, he went from 10 snaps to 20 to 41, I think now at 49. I expect that next week he will lead the team in snaps. Zach Moss still playing well, by the way. Zach Moss is still playing well, but Taylor has the big day here as well in terms of that. He gets in the end zone and, of course, immediately gets drug tested. As soon as he gets the end zone, as Jonathan Taylor tweets out. Very funny. Back-to-back games with 4 more targets and 45 receiving yards, which is exciting as well. Taylor's usage in the passing game. I don't think Zach Moss goes away, but, they play the Saints next week, which is not a great matchup, but neither was the Browns, and they both did that. Again, they're committed to the run under Gardner Minshew. So, I think Taylor, starting next week, is an RB1. Zach Moss is still like a viable flex.
Yep, agreed.
A strong day for the Browns backfield as well. Both Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt finish as top 13 running backs. Deshaun Watson gets hurt in this game. P.J. Walker comes in. Pretty good workload.
That was weird too, by the way, because he goes out for the concussion protocol. He clears the concussion protocol, right? But then they stick with P.J. Walker?
I know, but they couldn't rule out Deshaun because if Walker got injured, then they needed him to come in. But it's like, well, if Patrick Mahomes had gotten cleared, I think Patrick Mahomes is coming back in the game. I think that the key there is that Deshaun looked terrible before he got concussed.
Yeah. He's bad. Concussed. Like, let's just be open about this. Deshaun Watson is a bad NFL quarterback right now. He's
certainly playing like it.
The sample size as a Brown has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league.
He had one really good game against the Titans. Outside of that, every game has been bad for Deshaun. And he didn't look right with the shoulder yesterday.
In fairness, $250 million does not buy what it used to these days. Inflation, everything like that.
Things are a little different now.
Exactly.
If they'd spent that $250 million on Russell Wilson, they might win the Super Bowl this year. Wilson at least is looking competent.
It's a grim conversation.
That is a grim conversation. That is very grim. By the way, they could have saved $249 billion of that, $249 million of that, and just gotten Minshew or Josh Dobbs.
Not trade Josh Dobbs.
Honestly, just not even trade Josh Dobbs, and they'd have been fine.
Maybe they could trade back for him now. Anyways, one thing we'll keep an eye on throughout.
Brissett, honestly, they should have just. In real talk, they should have just re-signed Jacoby Brissett. But
one thing we'll keep an eye on throughout the week on this game is Jerome Ford with an ankle injury was seen in a protective boot after the game. That's from the Athletic's Zack Jackson, who covers the team. So we'll have a lot of updates throughout the week on that.
Stefanski said that Watson will play. He will be the starter next week. He's fine.
So that'll be fine. But to your point, Jerome Ford had a really nice game here. Had the big 69-yard touchdown in the very first minute of the game. But the ankle injury that you mentioned happened in the fourth quarter. I just think this is, and we'll get more into this tomorrow during waiver wire, but Pierre Strong came in, played 61% of the snaps after Jerome Ford went down. It'll be Kareem Hunt and Pierre Strong in that order if Jerome Ford has to miss time. Again, they play the Seahawks next week and then Arizona. So be interesting. We'll get more into that tomorrow on the Waiver Wire show.
Our next game, the Lions traveled to Baltimore, and it did not go well for them as Lamar Jackson went wild. 21 of 27 for 357 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 9 carries for 36 yards and another touchdown. Jay, is Lamar right back in the MVP race after this monster performance?
I think so. I think he's the second favorite behind Patrick Mahomes, who we'll get to. This is the best Lamar has looked to me since 2019 when he won MVP unanimously. And we've been waiting for this high-octane Todd Monken offense. Well, it finally surfaced against what to this point had been a pretty good Detroit Lions defense. But, I mean, this game was all about Lamar. He was magnificent on the ground, but particularly through the air with the 357 passing yards. 21 of 27, gets the 3 touchdowns as well, and he looked all world, Connor.
You know, he really did. I was just sorry to jump in here. I was just going to say, because Lamar's been inconsistent. I did a thing on the post-game show where they asked me about Lamar, and we were talking about this. And I said, he's had a couple of games with over 28 fantasy points, and then he's had a couple where less than 15. He's been very up and down this entire year. This is the most fantasy points he's had a game in since week 3 of last year as well. They play Arizona next, then they're home to Seattle, home to a suddenly vulnerable-looking Cleveland Browns defense, and then they play the Bengals on Thursday Night Football. So the schedule's lining up for if it's all come together in this Monken offense, which we think it is. One last thing I just want to say before we move off of. So Lamar, I agree. Potential league winner the rest of the way, the guy that you draft him be. Shout out to Lawrence Jackson, though, because when we did shot for shot on Fantasy Football Pregame, one of his shots was 350 total yards and 4 touchdowns for Lamar Jackson. Call your shot, hit your shot. Props to Lawrence Jackson. Come on. Lord don't lose.
That's a great call
Lord
by
won,
Lawrence. Yeah, Lord does not lose. Listen, one positive from this game for the Lions, and there was a lot of negatives from Aaron Glenn's defense. But on the offensive side of the ball, no David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries, 68 yards, 9 catches for 58 additional yards. That's the Jahmyr Gibbs we were expecting.
Exactly. Career high 10 targets this week. He came into the week with 18 targets all season long. So using him in the passing game and seeing him get Kamara-like usage without just dump offs, but actually like big plays. He saw 86% of the snaps with David Montgomery out. 74% of the snaps in the 2 games without David Montgomery, and we expect Montgomery to miss a couple of more games here. And so, yes, this was the Jahmyr Gibbs breakout game that we've been waiting for. It's awesome to see. In a game in which much did not go right for the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs was a bright spot.
Chargers-Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, monster day, 34-42, 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That Chiefs offense, Jay, was absolutely in control. Here's the craziest thing about Mahomes and Kelce right now. At one point against the Chargers, Kelce and Mahomes connected on 28 straight targets dating back to Week 5. Per Next Gen Stats, the odds of that happening, 0.03%.
Yeah,
these guys are locked in.
That's quite low. We're just watching this game, and I think I watched just about every second of this because I'm watching every Chiefs game, so I have all these Mahomes MVP tickets. And just watching the game.
And you're a Swiftie.
And I'm a Swiftie.
Yes.
That's the other part of that. Just watching the game, it became clear that Mahomes is just so much better at the sport than everyone else is. This is like watching Roger Federer in 2006. It's like watching Usain Bolt. He's just that much better, and just the confidence that he's going to make the right play. His line, 34 of 42 for 424 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. He left money on the table in this. Kelce had a bad drop. There was a fumble that killed off a scoring drive approaching the red zone. Mahomes, even the interception that he threw, he's just so smart in understanding what wins football games. Like, he is the one guy in the league who just, on 3rd and long, if he's got nothing on, I'm throwing it deep. Because maybe I can draw a pass interference, maybe there'll be a play, and it's an interception, and it doesn't matter because it was just a punt, basically. He's just playing at such an insane level right now. Kelce is right, and to me, Matthew, the big story out of the game, though, from a fantasy perspective, is Rashee Rice continues to trend upwards.
1,000%. He's now had 60 more receiving yards in back-to-back games, his 3rd straight game with double-digit fantasy points. He scored a touchdown in 2 of the last 3 games. A season-high 59% snap rate. We keep saying this. I've been saying this all season long. Rashee Rice is coming. This is going to be a thing. This is going to be a thing. Well, I think it's now a thing, right? 6 targets on the game, as you see it there on your screen. More than MVS, more than Isaiah Pacheco. The only pass catcher that had more targets on the Chiefs is, of course, number 87. And so Rashee Rice feels like they have found something. They, and I think we have seen this in fantasy for a long time. I think back last year in terms of Christian Watson, in terms of Chris Olave, rookie wide receivers that sort of started dominating over the second half of the year. Rashee Rice obviously doesn't have the pedigree that those guys do, but he does have the quarterback and the offensive system around him, and not a lot of competition for targets outside of Kelce. So this is a real thing. This is a real thing. As we head into Monday Night Football, he's the 13th best wide receiver in fantasy.
Yep. And Connor, I think just looking at just the way that the box score broke down for Kansas City, this is how the offense should look. Yep. Kelce is the monster. He gets the share of the targets. Rashee Rice is your wide receiver 1. Then MVS is kind of the next guy. And then you give Pacheco and McKinnon some work in the passing game. It's been so uneven to this point, the Chiefs offense, it finally clicked yesterday.
Yeah, it feels like the Sky Moore experiment, too.
They're like, we're done.
They're trying to make it a thing so many times, and they can't make it a thing.
Yeah, and they brought back Mecole Hardman. Okay, great, and he'll increase some stats, but he's gonna have a couple. He's gonna have a package. He'll play some special teams, be fine. But yeah, I agree with you right there. The only thing that was crazy to me was just how open Kelce was. It's like this is not a new thing, Brandon Staley. Like at some point, maybe double him, maybe triple him.
Not sure Staley's going to be the coach when these teams play again.
I mean, dude, like it was just like he was just wide open, and part of that on some Kelce, just the brilliance of him finding gaps in the zone and just being able to like be somewhere, and him and Mahomes just kind of playing playground basketball out there. But still, like, dude, what are you doing?
It was a disappointing game for the Chargers, and it wasn't just their defense. It was from a fantasy perspective. Justin Herbert comes in as QB 20. Not a good game for Herbert. Austin Eckler under 6 points. Not a top 35 running back as it stands right now. If you're looking for anything, Josh Palmer is the guy, not Quentin Johnston when Mike Williams got hurt. 5 catches for 133 yards for Josh Palmer. Quentin Johnson, 2 targets.
24% target share since week number 4. So 100%. Like, he's a legit part of an offense that's clearly going to be needing to throw quite a bit. Bad day at the office for Herbert and Eckler. You're not worried about. They play Chicago next week.
Watching Herbert on the sideline, now he's kind of grown out the facial hair. It reminds me of Andy Roddick. Just watching Roger Federer across on the other sideline because Mahomes is just a little bit better.
Is that our second Federer?
To be fair, it was part of the same kind of cogent.
2 tennis comps.
Old tennis comps too.
Yes.
Like, hey,
I've got a Pete Sampras one coming later.
The NBA comps are out. Tennis comps are
Bjorn Borg?
Yeah.
Yvonne Lundell? Do you want to just let's like really alienate our entire audience, like people that no one ever heard of? Anyway, the Chargers play the Bears next Sunday night right here on NBC and Peacock.
Blockbuster. Last one on this game.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert.
Well, that's why there's betting in fantasy.
Exactly. And part of that, so Justin Herbert has left about 150 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns on the table for Keenan Allen in the past week, just with bad throws.
Yeah.
So Keenan
There was
Allen,
one that was wide open.
He's a lot better than his stats.
All right.
Last game quickly here, guys. The Steelers at the Rams. Another game that kind of went much differently than many of us thought. We'll start with the backfield. Darrell Henderson, brought from the practice squad, 18 carries, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Really no ramping up Darrell Henderson. Royce Freeman gets 12 carries for 66 yards. Zach Evans didn't play a snap.
No, I mean, dude, for everyone that spent a lot of fab on Zach Evans, like, it's crazy. But we talked about this on Fantasy Football Pregame extensively. If you missed it, where we talked about that it was going to be Henderson and Freeman. Henderson ends up getting the touchdown. I mean, Freeman played 42% of the snaps. He got 12 for 66.
Yeah, he was fine.
It was a little bit of he was fine. Henderson's the one who converts it. 58% of the snaps. He had 19 touches, his most touches since Week 12, 2021. You're saying activated from the practice squad. Activated from his couch.
Yes.
Like a week ago, he was sitting at home watching Fantasy Football Pregame drinking Dollaritas, I'm assuming.
In a Matthew Berry costume.
Yeah, in a Matthew Berry costume. So Henderson, and it is just as we talked about on Fantasy Football Pregame, like McVay is generally fairly honest, and he talked up Henderson, he talked up Freeman. He was kind of like Zach Evans. Zach's continuing to learn. He was just very lukewarm here. So that, I think, obviously is the answer going forward. It'll be Henderson and Freeman. We'll talk about more of them tomorrow on the Waiver Wire show. Another huge game for Puka Nacua. I think the important thing here is, so great, Puka's a stud. We know that. Diontae Johnson makes his return here as well. And his first game back since Week 1, a 26% target share. He's played 2 games this year. He has at least 6 targets. You see Puka there on your screen as I'm talking up Diontae Johnson, but because I'm trying to whip through this quickly. But I'm not worried about Cooper Kupp. I guess he'll be fine.
I don't know why they just didn't throw the ball more in this game. They ran it a little bit too much. Last thing here, my man, Najee Harris, who I've staked my... Michael Thomas gets in the end zone on Thursday.
What a week for Jay.
Najee Harris,
Everything's coming up, Jay.
My 2 best friends, my family members, MT and NH, as I call them.
Najee Harris, RB12 right now, Jay. Selling high?
Superstar.
Selling high? Okay,
buying more shares.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I think it was fine. I think this backfield is what it is.
Fine. It's magnificent. 14 for 53. Love that.
Look, 57% of the team snaps, which is the most since Week 2. This is great. He's now had 15 or more touches in 5 straight games, so that's positive. I mean, the workload's there. I still would rather have Jalen Warren. But yes, Najee Harris suddenly useful.
Yes.
Useful. He's a young Matthew Berry out there. Useful. Not great, but useful.
All right, with that, we're taking our first break. When we're back, we got Weekend Warriors and Sunday Scaries coming right up. But before we get there, basketball season is almost here, and that means one thing. It's draft season. Get the Rotoworld Basketball Draft Guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league this year. Go to NBCSports.com to get your draft guide now and use preseason 25 to save 25% off and receive a $10 Fanatics e-gift card. We'll be back right after this.
The running back, Deontay Foreman. Mooney in motion, come at the slot to the right. Snap back, Bijan. With time, gonna zip it right. Caught. Deontay Foreman inside the 2, breaks a tackle and plows in to the paint. Touchdown! Touchdown Bears! His 3rd touchdown. First through the air, 2 on the ground, and the Bears up 17 on the visiting Raiders.
Weekend Warriors. Headlined, of course, by D'Onta Foreman.
Of course.
Your RB1 right now. Once forgotten about D'Onta Foreman.
Not me.
That sound you heard was his 3rd score. Yes, 3rd score of the weekend. Roschon Johnson was out. D'Onta Foreman with a massive performance, Matthew.
Yeah, that running back list of leaders, and Gus Edwards at 5, just like we all drew it up. But yeah,
it through the air.
D'Onta Foreman, obviously career high in fantasy points. Over the last 2 weeks with, Khalil Herbert is on IR and Roschon Johnson has been out. He's been in the concussion protocol. D'Onta Foreman has had 35 touches. He's averaging 116 yards a game in any game in which he's gotten 15 touches since the start of last season, right? 8 games. And so when he gets work, he's been very, very effective as well. So you mentioned that reception. Like, he had 16 for 89, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown. Of course, the passing touchdown coming from T-Bag Tyson Bagent, who wins in his debut. You see it there on your screen as well. It'll be interesting to see. So, again, they play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. As we head into Monday Night Football, he is the #1 running back in fantasy. We'll see if Roschon Johnson is cleared from the concussion protocol. This has been going on for a while now. It's been over 2 weeks that he's been in. But feels like even if Johnson is back, Herbert is still on IR. Feels like Foreman has played well enough to earn a piece of this backfield.
Yeah, and so what the Bears were doing when it was Herbert and Roschon was first 2 series of the game, they go to Herbert, third series goes to Roschon. When he comes back, I reckon that's the exact same thing, except Diontae is in the Herbert role.
Right.
Yeah, I think so too. You can't take him off the field completely right now. Another weekend warrior, Mike Evans, catches 6 of 8 targets, 82 yards, and a touchdown, Jay. Mike Evans has been really, really consistent this year.
Yeah, tough game of football, this one. Not the most exciting. A very fitting NFC South showdown. The Falcons are +100 to win their division. That's a disgrace. And I'm not saying the odds are wrong. It's just the fact that we've gotten here in the world is not ideal.
No, everything around the Falcons is a disgrace.
Don't make Sunday scaries, don't worry.
Good, I want to get into that.
But Mike Evans, I mean, he just continues to produce. He has a good rapport with Baker Mayfield. He goes 6 for 82 and a touchdown on the 8 targets. Baker is good enough to provide value for his receivers.
Point, yeah.
And he hasn't been great from a football sense, but he's like Gardner Minshew. He can get the ball to his guys.
Yeah.
Courtland Sutton, the subject of trade chatter throughout the week. He comes out and has a big game, catches all 6 of his targets, 76 yards, and a touchdown. We'll see if Sutton ultimately stays in Denver these next couple of weeks, Matthew, but he had a really good game.
By the way, he's had a bunch of good games. Like, I mean, to the extent that the Denver Broncos have been able to move the ball, Jerry Jeudy's out there arguing with guys on the sideline, former, Steve Smiths of the world. Meanwhile, Courtland Sutton's just going out and producing. He has scored in 5 of 7 games so far this year. He's had double-digit fantasy points in 6 of 7 games. Like, he is Russell Wilson's preferred target as well. As we head into Monday Night Football, he's the 7th best wide receiver in fantasy football. And, this is all very viable. They play the Chiefs next. They're going to have to throw against Kansas City. I mean, he scored the last time they played the Chiefs, even though that was a lower scoring game than any of us thought. He still scored an unbelievable catch against Kansas City in prime time. So, yeah, good for Courtland Sutton, blocking out the noise and just focusing on, making plays.
Quietly one of the best red zone receivers in the NFL this season. The Giants get a win over your Commanders, led by Tyrod Taylor, but Jay, even more importantly, led by Darren Waller. Darren Waller, 7 catches, 98 yards, and a touchdown. Had that huge touchdown catch, too, in the second half of this game.
Yeah, coming into the season, Darren Waller was drafted as a top 5 tight end. He looked like it against the Commanders. 7 for 98, has the 8 targets, which is the key. Daniel Jones going to get his job back? Because Tyrod Taylor's played pretty well the past 2 weeks.
Comments were odd this morning, too. He really didn't want to address much of that question. He said he didn't have a health update on Jones as they get ready for the Jets on Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I assume it's going to be Jones because of the contract coming back. But Tyrod Taylor has played better than Jones has all this season. Either way, I think Darren Waller, he's an automatic starter tight end every single week.
Always has been, but what's positive here is a 39% target share in this game, and he's had at least a 21% target share in 5 of the past 6 games. 2 of the last 3, 7 for 85, at least 7 receptions, at least 85 receiving yards. He's also been getting some end zone targets as well. It was nice that my Commanders decided not to completely hold him and mug him the way the Bills did in the game before. We'll talk hopefully more about this game in Sunday Scaries. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think Daniel Jones probably gets his job back, but maybe they're like,
take your time.
Take your time, because again, even though Tyrod Taylor had one of the most boneheaded plays this year in terms of the time management at the end of the first half against Buffalo, overall he's played very well, and the Giants have been, for whatever reason, they've been more competitive under Tyrod Taylor than they have Daniel Jones this season.
I also think Brian Daboll, in a weird way, I'm not sure he's coaching for his job, but I'm not sure he's that far off with how poorly the season started. I think Tyrod probably might give them a better chance to win games until Jones proves that he's 100% right.
The general manager is his buddy from Buffalo, and he's the coach of the year.
3 and 14. You can't go 3 and 14.
He won the coach of the year last year. I think if he goes 3 and 14, I'm with you. Okay, that's tough. That's tough.
To use another non-football analogy, Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year for the Raptors and was sacked the same season. So you never know sometimes.
That's a good point. If there's one positive, though, the Giants play my Commanders again. They'll win that game. So they've got at least another good win on the board.
That gets them to 3. Our final weekend warrior, Dalton Kincaid, 8 catches, 75 yards, season high in targets, receptions, and yards. Matthew Kincaid, who was probably dropped by some people during his injury, will be a popular waiver wire target it this week.
And we'll talk about it more tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really nice game to see. Bills just don't look right offensively. But, listen, he's been under 65% of snaps in every game since week 1, and this game was no different. Just 61% snap share. He's got a 3.7 yards average depth of target. Like, it's all dink and dunk stuff, and I just, again, tight end, the bar for success at tight end is so low. Yes, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow, but I need to see it again before I'm ready to be like, yeah, absolutely, Dalton Kincaid. It's a whole thing.
So let's get to Sunday Scaries. Of course, we find a way to have the Falcons in this. Arthur Smith in fantasy football, just a very weird duo quite often. Bijan Robinson leads our Sunday Scaries. He had 1 rush for 3 yards at halftime. Arthur Smith said Robinson's lack of work in the first 2 quarters was a result of the running back just not feeling all that great.
Seems to have a migraine, Bijan.
Yeah.
So I guess you throw it out. You just throw the game out, and he'll be back next week to normal.
You couldn't throw a couple of Advil down his throat and call it a day.
Strange.
Like, what's
very strange?
I mean, he was dressed. It's a shocking, it's fascinating thing. By the way, and I'll just say this, which is really nice. I saw this. DraftKings, our friends at DraftKings, they're refunding every single bet that had Bijan in it. If you had a parlay that cashed every leg except for the Bijan leg, they're refunding that as well. So anyway, details there with DraftKings. It'll happen in the next 48 hours. So they're taking care of everyone on that. This is just so weird because he wasn't on the injury report at all. Nope. This is awful. As somebody who has Bijan Robinson in all 4 of my guillotine leagues, it was not great. Not great. Luckily, I have Lamar Jackson, a number of them I think I'm going to survive. But still, it was not a good day at the office. I guess you just have to throw it out and but whatever. Well, listen, fantasy managers, you drafted somebody coached by Arthur Smith. You know what you were getting into. It is what it is. Drake London, whatever. He terrorizes us. He hates us with a fiery passion.
He's a menace to fantasy football. Yeah, the government
He's a
needs
menace.
to check in on this.
I'm going to dress up for Halloween. I'm going to dress up as Arthur Smith, and I'm scared of fantasy managers. That's a good costume. Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
Our next Sunday Scaries member, Josh Jacobs, 11 carries, 35 yards. He had 1 6-yard catch. It was just a bad day for the Raiders all around. It seemed like they were getting Devontae Adams going early, and then he kind of fell out of favor.
But what are you going to do? Like Josh Jacobs, you have to start him every week. It's just a mess now.
100%. That's the other thing. It's just the quarterback. They expect Jimmy Garoppolo back next week, and I think the offense will look a lot better. Hoyer was terrible. He got replaced by Aiden O'Connell. Give the Bears credit, by the way. After being brutal, they've turned it around a little bit. They're starting to playing a little bit better here as well. And this last one, Connor, this was tough for me. Aaron Jones, free Aaron Jones, 36% snap rate. And the Packers may not be good.
They're not good.
Jordan Love is. I'm pulling all fire alarms on Jordan.
I've seen enough.
Jordan
Love him out.
And it hurts everyone else.
I have on my dynasty league. I grabbed Sean Clifford. Just for S&Gs.
What a great way to go to break.
It might be more than S&Gs by week 15. Who knows?
You know what S&Gs means, Jay?
I don't believe we have that in Australia.
All right, come here. I'm going to explain to you. Hang on. Exactly what S&Gs. So the S, what the S stands for, is it stands for the word.
Partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
And then the G stands for giggles.
Is that right?
Yes, see, that's what it is, right? See, so now you know what S and G stands for, right?
America.
You got the S and then the G is the giggles, right? There you go.
Sense, Matthew.
Here are the most bet Monday Night Football props on DraftKings right now. Brandon Ayuk receptions over 4.5. That on DraftKings is at -130. Very popular. We'll see if it moves. Brandon Ayuk receiving yards over 69.5. Brock Purdy passing touchdowns over 1.5. Ayuk alternate receiving yards 100 plus. That's plus 300. Josh Metellus tackles and assists over 5.5. Does the public know something on Josh Metellus that the people up here do not?
Those people can pick Josh Metellus out of a lineup. They've done well.
Jay, are you tailing Josh Metellus, or you have something else up your sleeve?
I'm not tailing Josh Metellus.
I will like the Brock Purdy. I will say the Brock Purdy over 1.5 passing touchdowns I like as well, because I do think that's where you want to attack Minnesota's in the secondary as well.
Yeah. So normally it is scary betting an under in a primetime game, particularly as previously in this segment I've taken under on Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase, which is terrifying. Not as terrifying going under on Alexander Madison's rushing yards, which is set at 45.5. He's gone under in 4 of his 6 games. I think at some point this is just going to flip and become Cam Akers' backfield because of how Madison has just struggled, frankly. And now he goes up against 49ers run defense, which hasn't been amazing this season, but still has the same personnel of what was a top 2 rush defense in the NFL last season. So I think Madison goes under 45.5 in a tough game script for Minnesota.
Yeah, I like that call, especially when you think about that. I mean, again, Niners are up to a half touchdown, -7. Sorry, but they're a touchdown favorite in this game. So again, Vikings get down, they probably abandon the run as well. He did get a lot of work last week. Cam Akers didn't do much last week, but
and he still went under.
Yeah, exactly. I like that bet as well. I'm also on the Minnesota side in terms of a bet here. Give me Jordan Addison over 51.5 receiving yards. Look, he's been over this number in every single game this year where he's gotten 6 or more targets. I think that with no Justin Jefferson, he should get a ton of targets here as well. Last week he played basically every offensive snap as well. Look, the Vikings, the 49ers, as good as they are defensively, they have allowed over 60 receiving yards to wide receiver in 4 out of 6 games this year. Again, they'll be trailing, they'll be throwing, the Vikings will be. So yeah, give me the over 51.5 receiving yards for Jordan Addison tonight.
Guys, the most bet prop board filled with Brandon Ayuk. No surprise, Deebo Samuel dealing with the small fracture in his shoulder. We'll see how limited McCaffrey is. We know he's going to play. I like one that's not on the board, though. Brandon Ayuk, longest reception, over 25.5 yards. He's done this in 2 of the last 3 games. And most importantly, I think the opportunity will be there tonight.
Yep, and Flores blitzes significantly more than any defensive coordinator in the league. So you'd expect with that, going to be higher variance, going to be more chunk plays for the Niners available.
Christian McCaffrey, anytime touchdown, is up to -200 now. Does he get it? I think it's for the 400th time in a row.
I think he will get it.
Yeah. He cashes that.
-200 on an
as well. All right, well, listen, why don't you throw a bet on the game just for S&Gs? It's closing time, which means you can't stay here, but you gotta go home. I said that in Philly. I'm saying that here. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. Good luck tonight. I hope your Monday Night Miracles come through. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.